And we are waiting. Yay! Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Witches and Wine. This is the show where we talk about witchy stuff and we drink wine. Clink and drink. And clink and drink. I don't know if you got something there, Gwen, but...
Salute.
Awesome. I am hiccuping. I am your hostess with the mostest, Lola Stardust. And before we start our show, I'd like to do our little disclaimer. That is really good wine. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm sorry. I've never tasted it before. It's really good. I'd like to do our little disclaimer. This show is called Witches and Wine, meaning we do partake in wine. So it has been brought to our attention. Sometimes people don't appreciate the tipsiness that we get on the show.
Don't watch a show called Witches and Wine.
So we have this wonderful thing that you can do. There's an X in the corner of your screen, and you can just click it. It's like magic and will disappear, and you don't have to deal with our drunk asses. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this over to Silent as Stardust, my partner in crime, my high priest, my husband, and he's going to tell us about the wine.
Yep, we shall. So this is a new one for Witches and Wine, something we typically don't do. We did a Blueberry Moscato. We're usually dry red fans, but we thought we'd change it up tonight. This is from B.Lovely Winery out of Walla Walla, Washington.
Walla Walla, Washington.
Nice and sweet, but not overly sweet. It tastes like blueberry pie, to be honest with you, as a wine. So if you're a blueberry pie fan, this wine's going to go wonderful for you, especially on a hot summer day. Going to be about $15 a bottle, but if you're a big fan of blueberries, definitely give this a go.
It's really light.
Yeah,
it's a great hot summer day, sitting on your back porch.
What's known as a porch pounder is the style.
Is that what it's called?
Yep.
That sounds kind of dirty. Anyway, thank you, honey. Thank you for the porch pounder. So, I want to introduce our wonderful guest. You can see her beautiful face there on the screen. We got to get to know her. I did, and so did my husband. He coordinated the workshops for the ATC Spring Mysteries that was online just last month?
Yep.
Yeah, last month.
Yeah, beginning of April.
And he got to speak to her. Was this a Jason Mankey?
Yeah, the wonderful Jason Mankey referred me over to this lady and this woman, and she is absolutely amazing.
And I got to see her workshop, and I absolutely loved it. It is Gwyn from Three Pagans and a Cat. Welcome, Gwyn.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being our guest, and I can already tell that we are going to get along great because we were having technical difficulties, so we got to chat before.
Extended green room time.
We had extended green room time, and it was really fun. So, first of all, why don't you tell people who you are and where you like what you do and where we can find you, all that fun stuff.
Okay. Well, I am Gwyn from Three Pagans and a Cat. I am one of the co-hosts of the podcast, Three Pagans and a Cat. You can find us at threepagansandacat.com, and that's the number 3, pagansandacat.com. We're on all the platforms, and we have been, we've been recording our podcast for 3 years now. We're about 3.5 years in.
Nice.
And what it is myself, my husband, and my oldest child, and we are all pagans, but on different paths. And although my husband, Carr, and my child, Ode's paths are starting to merge, which is interesting. He's switching from a Celtic path to a heathen path.
Oh,
so,
nice.
But I myself am a witch, a Hecatean green witch. And let's see, what else? Oh, I blog for Pathos Pagan.
Awesome.
It's called Three Pagans and a Cat.
Yeah.
On Pathos Pagan, so I blog there. And I'm writing a book called Green Earth Witchcraft, and it's going to be published by Wicca Press, and sometime in the future. It's an unspecified date, but we're hoping toward either the end of this year or the beginning of next.
Awesome. That must be so exciting to see. I love to write, and I'm meeting all these wonderful writers, and it's inspiring me to just maybe start putting some of my stuff out there. It's hard to put your stuff out there, though.
It is. It is very hard because, you know, you never know what people are going to think, if they're going to, you know, receive it in a positive way, or if they're going to tell you to fuck off. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Is this
Oh,
No, you're good.
Please say
Okay.
fuck off more.
Come on. We're drinking alcohol on camera, where we're not exactly going to be the most.
Well, Three Pigs and a Cat is an explicit podcast, and so I'm one of the ones who curses the most. So
You'll fit in just fine.
okay, phew.
Yep,
This is my sailor.
I'm the
Okay.
sailor.
Okay.
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah.
Wallpaper off a wall, baby. Wallpaper off a wall.
Well, yeah,
but anyway, you don't know how somebody's going to receive you, you know,
Yeah.
whether it's a podcast or like what you're doing with a video cast or a blog or a book, you know, but if you don't try, you never know.
And
So-
isn't it exciting? We were talking about in the green room. I like that.
Yeah.
We have a green room.
Yeah.
We were talking about how if you get that validation from someone, because you're always going to have the haters. There's you can't please everybody. You just can't. And if you think you can, you might be a little delusional, because it ain't going to happen. But even to get one person say, I love what you do, or I learned
thank you.
a thank you, or I learned so much from A, B, or C. Then you're like, oh, this is why we do it. It feels great to reach out to people and teach them things, and maybe have them learn something that they didn't know before, you know, because we're students. We're always students. We're always learning.
Exactly.
It never stops. So, how long have you been a practicing pagan? Can you tell me about your different what would you call it? Incarnations in your path. How did you come to pagan and witchy stuff?
Well, it's a little bit of a convoluted story, actually.
Well,
Those are the best ones.
Those are the best one. That's why we drink.
Yeah. In fact, I'm going to take a sip myself.
Yes, do it. Clink and drink to convoluted stories. Clink and drink. Yes.
No one got to prep the palate.
Yep.
No, I was raised a Christian and spent most of my adult life as a Christian. But even as a child, you know, I was experiencing supernatural events and, you know, sensing things that other people might not notice, if you will. I was very interested in witchcraft and spirits and mind readers, you know, psychics, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the occult.
Yeah, the occult. I was very interested in the occult, even though I didn't know that's what it was. You know, I didn't know those words until I became an adult. But, you know, that kind of thing is frowned on. So it was one of these things where you just kind of push it down, even though that interest just still builds and builds. And it wasn't until I was married, had a couple of babies, that I had always been questioning Christianity from the time I was like 12 and could really formulate some questions.
Yeah.
It really started reaching a head, I guess you could say, in 1994, 95. And so I started doing some research at the library, and I ran across a book called Ariadne's Thread, a workbook of goddess magic by Shekinah Mountain Water. And it just kind of opened my eyes to other possibilities, because I was just, you know, I was very unhappy with what I was doing. And so I gave one exercise a try, and it was like coming home.
Coming home. That's
right.
Coming home turn.
Yeah.
And then I told my very Christian husband about it, you know, because he was also raised a Southern Baptist, so he was uber Christian.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But of course, so was I, actually. I really shouldn't say that. I was very uber evangelical Christian, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, he was not happy. And so I ended up not following that path for another 5 years. And then I just got to a point where I needed to do this. So I started doing it in secret, and he was questioning his own faith. And so, you know, long story short, I spent about 8 years. I started out in Wicca. I tried traditional witchcraft. I tried Christian witchcraft. And then I had what a friend of mine calls a Christian retrograde. because, I had spent 30 years as a Christian, so there was all this guilt,
Yes.
still, and all these old tapes playing, even as I was doing these amazing, this wonderful path as a witch, I still had this guilt. So I went back and became a Christian again,
Oh, wow.
for, well, let's see, probably not quite 10 years, probably 8 years. In that time, I wrote books against the occult, what the Bible says about the occult. I mean,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
it was crazy. I thought I had this mission to tell other Christians why they should not practice witchcraft
Mm-hmm.
and all that kind of stuff. It was they were books written for Christians who were feeling the same temptation I had felt, kind of thing, is
Mm-hmm.
how I had looked at it. But even as I'm writing both, I had 2 books that were published. Even as I was writing the second book, I was questioning things again, and I was drawn back toward my path, and ultimately, my husband, he was like, I can't be a Christian anymore. This doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I can't be a Christian anymore because of a bunch of things that was happening in my own life. My father is gay. My kids are both queer.
Yeah.
I am bisexual,
Yeah.
and and it was like, why am I in a religion
That
that
doesn't.
doesn't support any of that?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
tells me I'm sinful and wrong, and that my dad, who had passed away from cancer, was going to be in hell because he was gay.
Yeah.
I mean, I could not do it anymore, right?
Yes.
Really
I
good.
just couldn't do it anymore. So
Yeah.
that is when I just finally let all of that go. I embraced myself as who I am, which is a witch, and
Yeah.
I love my path. I love who I am as a witch. I believe that it is an expression of my true self.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've always been a witch,
Yep.
and it just became a recognition and an acceptance of who I am. And so, yeah, here I am now.
I
my
love
and,
that.
and my whole family is pagan, and,
Oh,
and
that's
we're
so awesome.
and we're very happy with that.
What were
Yeah,
you gonna
it
say?
was one of those things you didn't know what you were because you didn't know there was a term for it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you find you're like, hey, hold on, this is not what I had ever thought this term meant.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a very similar story for me. I grew up in a house that was Christian, but I asked so many questions that my parents couldn't answer because I read the Bible and it didn't. I had a lot of questions
Right.
and they couldn't answer it, so they're like, "Well, go find the answers." And I think they didn't think I was going to do that, and I started really looking into different religions and different beliefs. But I loved my relationship with my God.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Mm-hmm.
found out later that it wasn't the stereotypical relationship that a Christian has with God because I didn't believe he was the only one.
Mm-hmm.
I really believed in a goddess because when I was little, I thought the sun was the god and the moon was the goddess, but I didn't call them that. I
Mm-hmm.
just said the sun was the boy and the moon was the girl, and
Right.
talked to them. In the day I talked to the manly sun and wished for things during the day, and then at night I would say my prayers to the feminine moon.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought I was still quote unquote Christian, and I would talk to other Christians about this, and they're like, "What? Like that doesn't no, there's only one God. There's no female God. What?" And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"But what?" And that just didn't make sense. I also believed that my God or gods were very forgiving, or not forgiving, but were accepting of homosexuals, and because I had all those friends and I had those tendencies myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I just couldn't imagine that I wouldn't get to see all my friends in the afterlife because of who they loved.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so when they would say, "Well, it's against God's will," I'm like, "No, not my God, not no." And then they're like, "I think you're not Christian." I'm like, and it took a really long time for me to realize that. Oh, yeah, I'm not. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I think we all have that similar story where we don't feel like it doesn't quite click with the Christian upbringing.
Yeah.
But I love the spirituality of it. I love that feeling. And I do love, I am a big lover of religion.
Mm-hmm.
I love religion. I love when it's practiced in a way, the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
Because I'm not anti-Christian. I think Christianity has some beautiful things. I
Mm-hmm.
just think that it's become too.
Well, it's spirituality should be a calling, not a requirement.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Good. I like that.
and some people, they go to church because they're supposed to go to church, not because they want to go to church, but that's just what you do. Well,
Right.
that means you're not working your faith. You're not practicing the true form of your faith. So, is it worse to half-ass it, or is it worse to find what really calls to you?
What really calls
Yep.
to you. And I just like being with a group of people in that worship mode.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I enjoyed going to churches, because I tried different churches. I went to Catholic Mass with one of my friends quite a bit, and I loved the ritualistic part
Oh,
of the
yeah.
Mass, and I loved the incense and the singing. Now the up and down, hurt my knees, but I love that whole idea of it. I was in Job's Daughters when I was younger through the Masonic temple. So I had that background, and then
So, Christian witches.
so Christian witches is kind of
Yeah.
it
Exactly.
was really witchy. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking around going, and I was a teenager, and I'm looking around going, this is Christian? Like, because we sang the Christian songs, onward Christian soldiers, but the way we did things was very ritualistic and a little bit out there. I'm just saying, if anyone knows about the Masonic temples and stuff like that, they're all mystery religions. They've all got that same kind of beginnings of initiatory type of paths.
Yep.
So there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of similarities. We were talking earlier about Hekate, of course.
Of course.
Of course.
So you said you're a Hecatean green witch.
A Hekate and Green. Can you explain what that is?
Well, when I returned to, from my Christian retrograde, I embraced green witchcraft, and honoring the earth. And in fact, I worship the earth as a deity that I call the earth deity,
Yeah.
as a primordial spirit or world soul.
Yeah.
But I was really drawn to Hekate. And the amazing thing is, back when I had been practicing witchcraft before, there had been a time when I had called upon her for assistance in a crossroads spell, right?
Yeah.
And I had been really drawn to her then. But then when, after I had become, really embraced my path as a witch, and I became a green witch, I just felt so drawn to Hekate. And probably around the same time, I went to a convention, convocation in 2018, and there was this triple goddess ritual that occurred. And while Hekate was not specified, it was a maiden mother crone kind of, ritual. But I experienced the ritual with a vision of Hekate.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And she kind of just gave me this, hi, remember me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we all received a token, and I received a butterfly from that. And it was funny because I didn't really pursue anything with that until a year later, when this book came out by Cindy Brannon called Keeping Her Keys.
Yep.
And because of the podcast, I was able to review it for the blog, because I told you I had that blog on Patheos Pagan.
Yeah.
And so I reviewed the books, and I was working through it, and I was like, this is it. This is what I've been looking for,
Yep.
But yeah, and in fact, I took probably the first portion of her mystery school classes, on becoming a modern Hecatean witch.
Yeah.
I took probably what she now calls the red key. I worked through that part of the program. I also joined Sarita S. Covenant of Hekate, and went through the ritual to become a member, and have studied with her and read her books and things. But even as I was drawn to Hecate and was learning devotion again, because I had really shied away from being devoted to a deity until I started down the Hecatean path. And but through the Dipnon and through Numenia and just daily devotional actions of even just lighting a candle and reciting the Orphic hymn to Hekate, things like that, I did these steps toward devotion. But I realized that I was still a green witch. Green witchcraft was still the base of my craft. The earth deity was still a foundation, because I'm very much into plants and herbs and working with plant spirits and trees and stones and things like that. And so I realized, yes, I am a Hecatean witch, but I am also a green witch.
Well,
but Hecatean witchcraft, they meld, because Hecate, that was another book that Cindy wrote, Hecate's Garden, Entering Hecate's Garden. She is very much she's a chthonic deity. She's, not just the underworld, but mistress of land, sea, sky. She's got such immense, she's got her fingers in everything.
Yes, she does.
Immense authority. And I realized I could be both.
I relate most of my Hecate work with earth. I relate it very much to the trees and the dirt and the rocks and to me that's where I kind of really connect with her. I also connect with her in dream work. I do a lot of dream work. She likes to visit. She likes to visit people in their dreams quite a bit. But she is of that as well with her. If you look at her lineage, her mother was is it Asteria?
Yeah.
Yes.
Asteria.
Yes. So that is that's stars and dreams and that whole thing. So very, but when I think of Hecate, I think of that the ground and the earth and all of that, and that's everything that grows, and even composting and even the branches, dead branches on the ground, that kind of stuff, but it's still of the earthly plane. Did you lose the kitty?
No, I know where she is.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. I think part of it was when I first started, and a little bit of when people are talking about Hecate and witchcraft, there does tend to be this dark vibe. She's the dark mother. She's the underworld goddess. She's, there are a lot of people who only see her as the goddess of witchcraft or the goddess of ghosts and spirits, as a psychopomp. And there's this darkness around her. But the thing is, that's not all she is. And I kind of felt like, at least in some of what I was learning in various readings and stuff, I was kind of being drawn toward this. It's like people like the edgy aspect of Hecate.
Absolutely.
And then kind of ignore, like you were saying, the earthy aspect, the light aspect. She carries freaking torches.
Yep.
She illuminates, and she brings the light. So I think that's how I realized I could be both. So.
And I think as witches, obviously we're going to be attracted to that edgy, gothy, dark, because I mean it's a great aesthetic.
Oh yeah.
And I love it. I mean, that's kind of how I was a gothy girl in high school. I already had that aesthetic before I even knew I was a witch. And our new kitten, like we told you, she's roaming around, and my son is trying to find her.
I know what she is. Right here.
Okay,
I'm
well,
watching her, making sure the dogs don't get too much.
Okay, thank you, sweetie. But that's what I liked about your workshop that you did at Spring Mysteries, and a lot of the books I've read. When you get that basic introduction to Hecate as your dark goddess and your dark mother, and there's nothing invalid about that. That's great.
No.
That's what she does. But when you start to peel back the layers like an onion, there's so much more to her. And I think a lot of people don't realize that she is she loves her children. She's such a loving, protective mother. And there is this I call her the all mother. I've always referred to her as that. She is the all mother. She is the one that protects us. She loves her children. She
Mhm.
loves them fiercely, but she also isn't gonna be all, okay, sweetie. She does tell you what you don't want to hear.
Mhm.
We can't forget that point of her. Yes, she's loving. You can be loving and you can be
Stern.
stern
Yeah.
as hell.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that's what she does. And she's very, because she cares so much.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, I've talked to people who are like, oh, I'm afraid to work with her because she's so dark and scary.
No.
And I'm like, oh gosh, if you just get past that,
Mhm.
you would develop this amazing relationship. Your workshop I absolutely love because you were tuning into things that I have been just in the past, I'd say probably since my dad got sick, have really been, and it's been the last couple of years with the quarantine and everything, and my
Mhm.
dad was really sick. I started focusing in on that unconditional love and
Mhm.
protection and that side of her that is a lot of people don't realize about her.
Mhm.
So when you were talking about that in your workshop, it was really refreshing to hear that um, this is someone that is saying, hey, yes, she's this, but she's also this and this and this and this and this and this.
Well,
And
and that
Yep.
was how it was with her. Is I was intimidated by Hekate, because I deal with typically more light and I don't say fluffy because they're definitely not fluffy, but less introspective deities.
Mhm.
And so the first time I started working with her, outside of working with my wife, and it was like, oh, hold on, there is a much more calmness to her, and not a, you know, almost people think like vengeful or scorning, or she's going to punish you, or
Mhm.
she holds you to account in a way that's fair, but it's um, not mean or rude or uncomfortable.
If I
yeah,
may, can I share with you an experience? One of my earliest experiences
yes,
with her after I became a devotee of Hecate. I was again at a festival when we could still do festivals.
I know.
And I had a break because we were actually podcasting from the festival, and we had a break, and I was just feeling kind of like I needed to step back. I was feeling a little overwhelmed, and they had a labyrinth set up.
Awesome.
And so I decided to go walk the labyrinth. Well, as I'm walking this labyrinth, I felt just really disoriented and, was having trouble, like even navigating where I was supposed to go. So I started just, mentally and actually speaking out loud her epitaphs of Enodia, Clydicos, and Lampadios, and asking for her to guide me, to show me the way, to unlock the way I needed to go. And she was like so present there, and she guided me it was like she was walking in front of me with her torches, and she just guided me all the way to the center of the labyrinth, where for me became her cave. And so I spent time with her in this cave, just being comforted and being loved, and as you say, because she's a loving mother. And then when I was ready to leave, it was kind of like, okay, now you're ready, you can find your way out.
Yeah,
And I could,
yeah,
I could find my way out because she had illuminated the path that I needed to go. She'd unlocked the mental, spiritual doors that I needed to walk through from the
yep.
underworld back to the middle world. And that's the kind of deity, for me anyway, that Hecate is.
Absolutely. And for me, she helped me get through my dad's illness.
Hmm.
Um she helped me connect, or actually she helped me realize that I could, because I was taking care of him a lot, and she actually helped me realize that I don't have to do this alone, and I can give that heavy heart and that grief to her. And so I did a visualization where I took whatever it was out of me and I just handed it to her, because she's the one that told me, hand this to me,
Yeah.
give
Yeah.
this to me. I will take this from you, and
Yeah.
I will help you lighten that load.
Mhm.
You know, and so yeah, it was very it opened my eyes to a different type of nurturing
Mhm.
mother,
Mhm.
because I always knew she was that,
Mhm.
but when I put it into practice and I had an actual reason
Yep.
to look to her as my nurturing mother,
Mhm.
it was probably the strongest
Mhm.
experience I've ever had with her.
Yeah. Now
And
you had
yeah.
mentioned I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Oh, please go, please go.
You had mentioned how, people, are like, I'm afraid to work with her. She can be very direct. She can be a little, she can demand certain things, like when I first devoted myself to her, I apparently did the ritual wrong or something, because she was like, no, you're going to have to do this again.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
and so it's that kind of thing is how I've experienced her, but I've never been afraid of her. Let's put it that way.
No, to be afraid of Hecate means you're afraid of your shadow. And
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
and some people that's valid too, because
They don't want to admit the truth.
there's shadow work is
That can be tough.
it's really tough. And I did a workshop locally before we closed down. Um I did a workshop, sorry. Honey, of all the times to choose to do this, you're distracting me. He's chasing the kitty around. Okay, can you take her into the room and go do?
She's the one who wanted up here.
I know, but I asked you to babysit her so we could do our witches in one. Hey, this is what happens when you have kids and you record stuff. Anyway, and new kittens. I did a workshop on different dark goddesses and what kind of shadow work that you could do with them.
Right.
And of course, Hecate, that shadow work, I feel when I work my shadow work with her, it's almost like leveling up, because she will not let you go. You can keep going around in circles and she'll be there, and
Mhm.
she'll say, hey, I'm here to illuminate this, light this way for you. I'm here to guide you.
Mhm.
But here is some shadow that you are not, that block that obstacle, right?
Mhm.
And until you deal with that obstacle, she's not really willing to kind of let you go around it or
Yeah.
over it. She's gonna make you walk through the thick of the blah.
She's not a coddler.
No, she's not. No. And that's why people are afraid to work with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
She doesn't cut you slack. She doesn't cut you a lot of slack.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
true.
Excuses don't fly.
yeah,
Mhm.
excuses, and she lets you know those are what other excuses do you have? All right,
Mhm.
now can we get to work?
Mhm.
I think for me, that's why people are afraid to work with her.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
I mean, there's other reasons too.
Mhm.
The way that she's been depicted in, I mean, God, if you look at, in Macbeth
Oh
and those,
God.
gosh, she's just the scariest thing I've ever seen in my
Well,
life.
even some of her
Oh,
epithets, that's the word. She has hundreds of epithets, and
yeah.
some of them are beautiful
Yes.
and lovely and things like, and some of them are like, very scary.
The devourer of souls.
Hmm.
I mean, there's some really wicked,
Terrifying one,
terrifying ones, but you sometimes you got to work with that. You got, and she's in those aspects. Yes, she's the all mother, meaning all of it,
Hmm.
all of the good, the bad, the ugly, so yeah, and so your workshop was great when we were talking about that. Also, the misconception of the triple goddess
Right.
aspect of her. Can you kind of go into that a little bit?
Well, I think the thing that people need to remember is that, in ancient Greece, first of all, she was always perceived as a maiden.
Mhm.
She was never perceived as, a crone. That's a modern concept.
Yep,
That really, is a 20th century kind of deal. That's,
it is.
but so she was perceived as a triple deity. I'm looking at my notes because it's like, where is, I want to make sure I get the information right. I do write everything down.
What is your sign?
Mine is Pisces.
Pisces?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Do you have any earth signs in your chart?
I don't think so. Because I'll be honest, I am not a huge person with astrology and stuff. So yeah. I just know that everything seems to be moon for me.
Well, yeah.
So, oh goodness, I'm trying to find out where, because I want to get this right. Anyway, she was always, as a triple goddess, she was actually, she was paired with, like say, Demeter and Persephone and Hekate. They were brought together because of the Orphic hymn to Demeter.
Demeter, yeah.
Because I think I talked about in the class this, that Hekate actually doesn't have any mythology of her own. She's she's ancient. She's over 3,000 years old.
Yeah.
She comes from another land, and she was adopted by Greeks.
Yep.
And Romans and others.
That's why her history is so unknown, because
it really is. She's very enigmatic.
Yes. But
she's very enigmatic.
I like her too.
But it's funny because she with her history, just like her, she doesn't want the spotlight. She's there, but she doesn't want to be the focal point of there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, I cannot find that note about. I even brought it up because I thought you might ask me stuff from the class, and now I can't find it.
Let me see if I can remember from what I remember from your workshop and what I've read. The triple goddess misconception comes from her having the trimorphous.
Yes. She is seen as the trimorphous.
And when people saw that, because she can see in all directions, and then it was really Wiccans that it kind of combined that aspect with the triple goddess.
Right.
I think that's a big part of it, right?
Yes, it is, because she was triformous. Trimorphous would have been, she's seen either with one body with 3 heads, or sometimes 4 heads. They can be animal heads, or they can be the heads of young maidens looking in different directions. But that comes from her being a goddess at the crossroads. Because the triformous is because they would set up images of her with and it would usually be either one maiden with 3 heads, or 3 maidens back to back, each looking a different way to for the crossroads. And it was actually through the covenant of Hekate that I learned that she was there to protect the crossroads. And they would put these triformous statues at crossroads, in front of shrines, in front of homes, in front of entrances to the city, because she was seen as a protector. And that's a big part of it. So there was this understanding of her as this triformous, or the trimorphous, that she was, but she was still 3. It was like she was usually 3 maidens together, carrying keys or snakes or daggers or lamps or not lamps, torches, things of that nature. But then the 20th century came along, and the maiden mother crone came along, which I think is basically from the White Goddess. That book, Robert Graves. Robert Graves brought in this concept of the triple goddess, the maiden mother and crone. And because Hekate has been associated with, for instance, Demeter and Persephone and Hekate as part of a triple deity under in ancient Greece, they were 3. They were the 3 of them, but they were considered a triple goddess. The same with Selene, Diana, or Artemis. Artemis and Hekate as lunar deities. But yet lumped together. So when the 20th century came along, they made her the crone, and this maiden mother crone aspect, which is really interesting. And I think you mentioned Macbeth. I really think it comes from Shakespeare's description of her, but also Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley depicted her in his writings as this monstrous hag.
Yep.
And that devoured men, and
Yeah.
and that was just hideous and things like that. And that
it was his doing.
yeah. So I really do
Yeah.
think I think a lot of this modern 20th century, I'm sure there are other sources too that have fed into that.
Well, I
But
think also that was around the time where like Wizard of Oz, and you had the Wicked Witch, and you had
yeah.
that was like, and then the witch in Hansel and Gretel, even though that a lot of is Baba Yaga related,
Right.
but you had that whole time period of the hag witch, and it was really easy to just kind of adopt Hekate to that
Yeah.
part. So I think it was just a combination of all of that.
Do you also think it could be because of her age, in the sense that she's so old compared to some of the other deities?
It could be that. I mean,
Since she's so ancient,
Yeah.
that
More.
she's seen more. The wisdom, she's very wise, and we associate the crone with that wisdom and whatnot too.
part of it also is probably first century Christianity or third century Christianity, maybe, when they were they were vilifying all of the Greek and Roman gods and goddesses, right? And all they were Christians, the Christian fathers and scholars and whatnot. They would vilify and call them demons and things, and they did the same thing to Hekate, and they did, and of course. And by the time you get to the Middle Ages and stuff, witches are all associated with the devil and worshiping the devil and imps and demons and things like that. And of course, Hekate is most well known as not only the goddess of the crossroads, but a goddess of the underworld.
Yep.
She was a psychopomp, and so she crossed people, along with Hermes into the underworld, and they, so she was vilified as a demon, and goddess of witches, queen of witches. And so I think that's also where some of this perception, because witches were depicted even in the Middle Ages as, the evil,
the wart on
hag.
the nose.
That's where Shakespeare ultimately gets his depictions of witches as hags.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, cavorting with demons will do that to you.
Well, it does.
Right.
I mean, look at us. Look at us.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. I mean, they're silly people, gone out and, signing over their lives to the devil and whatnot. But I mean, that's what witches were to them,
exactly.
Even though that was not what it was.
Wasn't that kind of also a part of the intrigue of witches for us girls and boys? Well, I don't know about young boys, but young girls. And every witch I talked to really came to their peak of interest in witchcraft in the 90s, which I find so interesting because that's when all those movies came out. The Craft, Practical Magic, and then Charmed came out, and you had all that stuff that just almost like
sensationalized it.
It sensationalized it, but I think it was really important for that stuff to come out, because that's when the most of my friends, and even me, even though I didn't know I was a witch, that's when I was like, oh, I can relate to these girls.
Yeah.
I think it's important for that stuff to come out.
You had Sabrina as well for the younger crowd.
Yeah, Sabrina. Yep.
Well, even Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you had Willow and Tara, who were witches,
Yep.
Although I didn't like the direction they took Willow with that whole shenanigans, but
it was a little ridiculous. But I mean, what are you gonna do? It was the 90s. It was Hollywood.
We've gotten a bad rap for years.
Yeah, it's okay.
That's true. But yeah, I think you're right. I think because obviously Gardner started Wicca back in the 50s, and it kind of hopped the pond and came over here in the late 60s, early 70s. And and it just, but I think you're right. I think it really blossomed in the 90s.
Well, and then also think about Gardner when he was becoming popular with his studies, and it came over here. that was during the movies like Rosemary's Baby and all those where it was all the
occult was maybe
the occult people were really like
it was mainstream. You had Bewitched on TV. You had
Bewitched and
you know, everyone looked forward to seeing Samantha.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden, there was a witch that everyone liked.
Bell Book and Candle. I Married a Witch. You know, there was we've
Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Yeah, we've had
that movie.
Yes, we've had our peaks, and I seem to you get different generations that you know, because it does, even though like I love old occult movies. I think they're great, even though they are so misrepresentative of witches. But that's kind of what I like about it, because it's so far-fetched that I can see why people hopped on to either, oh my God, I'm afraid of these people, or oh my God, this is really intriguing, because there's always a part of us as witches that we obviously witchcraft is part of the occult. Okay. Think about the groups of things that are part of the occult. It's not this beautiful love and light, and there's some dark shit out there. And that is a part of who we are as well, or else we wouldn't be doing this. When we are working with spirit and deities, we are taking a chance every time of connecting with something that, and that's why we put all our, you know, boundaries and stuff like that. But sometimes that doesn't work. And you can, like you said, you can say something the wrong way. You can set your especially if you're new and you're, you know, you might be summoning stuff that you're not aware of. But and when people are like, oh, you don't want to do that, but I believe that that's a chance we take being witches. We sign up for that. Don't you kind of think so?
I think so, definitely. I think we're all you know, a balance more or less of shadow and light, and there's sometimes we have a little more shadow, sometimes we have a little more light, if you will, you know, depending on what's our experiences or what's going on around us in the world. But we also, you know, we have our magic that we perform, our intentions. As a Hecatean witch, as a green witch, like, I'm not afraid to curse if I feel like that is necessary. I know that some people go, you know, freak out. But I feel like a witch needs to be able to heal, but also to harm if it's necessary. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And, you know, and I know a lot of people say, you know, because as Wiccans, we do the and harm none, do as he will. But I look at that as, if you are willing to pay whatever consequence or pay or have pay the toll.
Now, see, see, I don't believe in the threefold law.
But
that's something I don't. That's something I don't practice. And I don't think that's the right, when I said the word harm, I don't know that that's necessarily correct, because, you know, like, I don't ever set out to intentionally harm someone.
No.
But like, I do practice baneful magic. If I need to bind someone, I will bind someone. If you know, if I need to banish someone, I will banish someone. And if, like, there is a situation where punishment needs to happen and the justice system or whatever is not able to address that situation, I have no problem taking responsibility for that. But that, I think that's what it comes down to. You have to own your shit, you know, whatever it is.
That's literally the phrase that her old coven used to use.
My old teacher actually told me that when my first year of dedicancy was own your shit. That's just how he said it to me. He's like, you just got to own your shit. And as a Wiccan, I don't have problems with people who use baneful magic or whatever, because again, we were talking about this earlier, the gatekeeping. It's not up to me to tell you that that's not right. No, you know, I trust you know what you're doing. You accept responsibility. You're an adult. That's totally fine. Just like people who don't believe in the threefold or the Wiccan Read, I would hope that they would be like, they may not believe in it, but I would hope that they wouldn't say, well, that's stupid, or you can't do that, because again, it works for me.
Exactly.
You know? And so that brings us into the gatekeeping of telling we can't tell people, or we shouldn't
Right. Right.
be telling people that their practice is not the right way to practice, because we were just talking about all the big things under the umbrella
Mm-hmm.
of paganism. There's so much
Yep.
that I'm always learning about. I'm learning about new stuff all the time. I'm always like, what is that? What is this? Oh my God, I've never heard of that.
Well, like even within my own family, before Carr started moving over in toward, Norse deities, he was Druid. He was
Yeah.
with Celtic deities that he worked with. My child Ode is a heathen witch. But I have a
His
son.
name is Ode.
Yeah,
That
Ode.
is an amazing name.
And
Love
then
it.
my son Jackson is a hedge witch, which
Yeah.
is a very different kind of path. We have similarities,
Yeah.
obviously, but there are aspects to his path that are different from mine.
Yeah.
As a Hecatean green witch. So it's just, and you're right. There's so many different things. Like I know I have several friends who are Satanists, and they're beautiful, amazing people
Oh,
who have a
yeah.
very interesting, path of their own.
Yep.
And I have friends who are OTO, the
Yep.
order, what is it? Ordo Templis.
Oh my gosh.
OTO something. It's the Crowley thing.
People, if you're watching, we're sorry, but it's oh my gosh.
OTO. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna say
OTO.
OTO. That's easy.
That's the
But
Lennox.
Yeah.
yeah, they're Thelemics. And I've been to a couple of their rituals, and they're very dramatic.
Yes.
They're open rituals.
Yes.
And because they also obviously have, just like
Closed ones.
many
Yeah.
many traditions have closed practices. But I got to go to two of their open rituals, and they were so different from like Wiccan rituals that I've experienced.
Yeah.
And so
But isn't it cool
it was
though
fascinating.
isn't it cool though that we can share these things and experience these things? And because like we said, we are always learning and absorbing. I think something I've always noticed with witches is that we are lovers of knowledge and lovers of always like sponges, just absorbing all that, because I believe it's important to know all that and to understand that we're not the only types of practitioners. I mean, I'm reading this wonderful book. I'm almost done with it finally. I read several books at the same time, which people find kind of weird, but I've always done that. Is Hekate, the book by oh
I know who
God.
you're talking about.
Yes, it's a wonderful book, and it's about Hekate, who's a Hecatean witch,
Right.
and the herbs and everything that she uses to protect herself and her son. And it can be very baneful, and it can be very hexing, and it can be but that is part of Hecate's lure. There is that type of magic. There is that you cannot just say in a Wiccan box that, oh, I'm a Hekate witch, but I don't practice any of that. I may not practice that to a certain point, but I'm very familiar. I've read about it. It intrigues me. And I also have made decisions weighing it out. Like, yeah, I'm Wiccan, but there are certain things I could see myself doing to protect my family.
There is the poison path, the people who work with baneful herbs and plants.
Yes.
For various reasons. They're not going out and poisoning people, but they call it the poison path. And that's a fascinating practice. And that is very much part of Hecatean witchcraft. It doesn't mean you have to do that if you're not comfortable with that, but it is very much a part of it.
I think it's important to realize the comfort level, but also there is a part of us, because again, we do push the limits, and sometimes you got to step out of your comfort zone a little, and do those things, and again, own your shit, be accountable, and just know what your limits are, know what you're willing to do. I think that's what's great about witchcraft in general, is we wouldn't know some of these more darker things if somebody didn't test it in the past. That's why I am a fan of Aleister Crowley, because even though the things he did, some of them, and a lot of it was very sensationalized, but at the same time, he did do some things. He pushed the limits.
Right.
And I think he pushed the limits and went beyond, like, here's the line, and he went way beyond it.
Right.
I think he did it because he wanted to know. He wanted to know, how far can we go? Because he did that, we now know certain things.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And if we want to go there, we can. If
Yeah.
we're, it's totally up to. That's why it's a very adult decision. It's not. I think as you get older, you learn how to see it in a way that is, I guess, more responsible. I guess to be responsible with your practicing, but. I have nothing against anyone pushing those limits or going to that part.
And like all of it, it's evolved.
Yes.
From where it started to where it's at now, there are diametric differences. There are things you would never do now in a circle that they would do back then.
Well, some people still do.
Would, but that's very much the traditionalist. But you get people now more eclectic, and they've evolved the thing to become more incorporating, more accepting, more equalizing of power of male and female, because the Crowley era, that was very male dominant.
Right.
Yeah, and there was a lot of
misogyny,
with some of the,
We're having to translate things from a 20th century perspective and a 19th century perspective, depending on who you're talking about, to 21st century understanding of gender, of, equality, of,
consent a big one.
Yeah.
It's all having to be addressed in a new way.
Yeah.
And looked at it. And I know that that's hard for some people,
It is.
as a solitary, that's not something I've really had to address.
Yeah.
Because, I've always been a solitary. That's my main practice, has always been solitary. I've been blessed to be in a number of, to attend a number of open rituals from various traditions. But, my main practice has always been solitary. But I can imagine how for some of the more traditional covens and traditions and groups and things, that these new ways of looking at things can be hard.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's wrong. It just needs change, needs to
evolve.
Evolving.
Yeah. Evolving. Yeah. Witchcraft is constantly evolving. Yeah. And also it's an interpretive craft. It's based on interpretation. We don't have a book that a lot of religions say are the main, tenets of their religion. We don't really have anything like that.
Well, even the magic that we practice, the folk magic, is different than what they practiced in the first century, or even in ancient Greece. The types of spells that they cast back then, because they had to hold it, like, there was, like, witchcraft was against the law. Temple magic was accepted, right? Yep. And most of the witchcraft that was done was, love spells, which were actually, against someone's, will. They were domination spells, right?
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing. If you look at what like folk magic from like the Middle Ages was, it's like some of the stuff they do is real skanky.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got the Greek magical papyri, and it's just fascinating to me to read their spells. Doesn't mean I'm going to go out there and like cut the head off of a bull, and you know what I mean, or what I'm using weird examples, but but it's still good to know where we have come from in the different types.
Exactly. Like the creation of a hand of glory was an amazingly creepy thing.
Yeah. Yes.
But they really did exist. They really did make these things, right?
Yes.
But we wouldn't do that today. We have evolved. We've moved on. We've changed our perspective on how we practice, and that's it's just part of life.
And again, it is what we were talking about earlier. We are taking something that has been mainly, you can find texts and such, but a lot of it is is oral history.
Wait,
A
wait,
lot
wait.
of it is passed down orally. So there's gonna be room for interpretation,
Mhm.
and there's gonna be, but that's a good thing, I think, because you can take it and work it into your personal practice.
Mhm.
And that's where we come back to, that's why it's upsetting to see some people say, that's not the right way to do it,
Right.
or, because how do we know? How do we know that? Really,
Exactly.
we don't know.
Yeah.
Before we wrap it up, because we're coming up to an hour and I could talk to you forever. I want to know really quick about, I don't think we touched upon this, and if we did, I apologize. That wine is going to the brain here real quick. Three Pagans and a Cat. How did that come to fruition?
Well, we had all separately come to, our individual paths, but we weren't really talking about it as a group, as a family. We would have these individual conversations, right? And so one day, though, we were, because my son isn't part of the podcast, but Ode and Carr and I, my husband and I, we were sitting around, we were talking about our paths and our beliefs and how they were different from one another and things like that. And he said, we really should consider, doing a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this might help other people.
Yeah.
And so, so we were like, okay, sure, why not? Could be fun.
Yeah.
And so we went into our bedroom. We always managed to record in our bedroom. That's we've lived in like 3 different places now since we started this, and it always ends up in the bedroom. But we brought in our card table. We stuck one mic between the 3 of us.
Yeah.
And we just started, And 3 years later, we have an amazing community of listeners that we call the Pride. We have incredibly generous Patreon supporters, and I think you had talked earlier about, how meaningful it is when people reach out to you and they say, hey, this has really touched my life, or it's really changed things for me. We've gotten quite a few of these emails of saying how much we've helped people either find their path or renew their path, or give them direction because they weren't sure what to do or how to go about learning. Because a lot of our episodes are about beginners, helping people on, finding their way. But yeah, so we pick a topic and we talk about it.
Yeah, it's
basically
really similar to how we started Witches and Wine, and it was around the same time, wasn't it? Has it been 3 years?
Oh, we're about 2.5 years.
2.5 years?
Yeah.
Gosh, I have no idea. It's the same concept. We just, we're sitting around talking with our friends, and we should film this. We should record this. We don't have, and we call our show the little show that could, because we are not super high production. There's so many YouTube shows out there where they've got, their webcams are really high quality. They
proper
edit
light, proper
studio. They edit really well. I have no patience for editing.
Yeah, we do edit our podcast. We have a live recording that patrons from a certain level on up can join the live recording and hear all of our shenanigans, and then everybody else gets to hear the edited version.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and but the thing is, like, we have a lot of fun with that, even though we are still pretty much a nickel and dime. We do our best because my husband has a broadcast background, so
nice.
He insists on it. At least we try to do our best to make it sound professional.
Yes.
But yeah, we have a lot of fun with it.
And if you ever want Witches and Wine on your show.
Oh yeah.
You like?
I'll have to talk to Ode. Ode is our scheduler, and my understanding is we are scheduled out until like maybe the end of the year. But I'll see what I can do.
We just kind of take it.
We're like a month out.
We're just a month out, and that's big for us.
We're a weekly podcast now, because we started out twice a month, And then we had these goals on with our Patreon levels, and they got real close to one of our goals that said we would move to a weekly format, and they pushed it. And so we have been on a weekly format now for almost 2 years.
See, that's ours is we started off weekly, and then we took time off, and then we come back. So we're trying to get back into it again, doing it weekly. I've seriously thought about Patreon. I hear that's a great way to reach out to your fans and get that kind of support. And
honestly, we were surprised. We thought maybe 50 people would listen to our podcast, and we are now in our 3rd year approaching 1 million downloads.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we have, like I said, we have an amazing support from Patreon. And from Patreon listeners, but we just love all of our listeners, whether they're Patreon supporters or not, because they interact with us on Facebook, in our Facebook group. We have a Discord. We have a YouTube channel that I'm very bad about updating. We're so behind on there's just no chance to catch up on that. But it has grown. We did not grow the community grew itself.
Yes.
Let's put it that way.
And that's amazing. And we are looking into all different ways that we can do it, but when it comes down to it, we just have a lot of fun with it.
That's important.
And that's the most important part of it. So, well, thank you so much, Gwyn. You have been so amazing, and your knowledge on Hekate and your background and everything is just, I love your story. I love your personality, and we just really love having you on the show.
Thank you.
You've just been so awesome. Before we go, we just like to let our viewers know that if you're interested in what our coven does, or you want to be a guest on our show, or you have any ideas, or even suggestions for how we can maybe get the word out there more, then please email us at
crossroadscoven@gmail.com.
I'm sorry, what was that again?
That was crossroadscoven@gmail.com.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching us. Thank you, Gwyn. You are so amazing. Check out 3 Pagans and a Cat. And always remember, please be so kind to one another and always walk with the goddess. And until next time, blessed be. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
We will see you soon.